Okay. Well, good afternoon all and welcome to the Vale of Glamorgan Council's Cabinet meeting of the 22nd of February 2024. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and I'm Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. We will again be using the Council's hybrid platform, so a few reminders both for us in the Chamber and those joining virtually. The meeting's being live streamed and recorded and will be uploaded to the Vale of Glamorgan Council's website as soon as practicable after the meeting. And secondly, can I just ask all participants to please ensure that if participating in person in the chamber, that their microphone is not activated if not speaking, and remote attendees mute themselves also when not speaking to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. And if anyone wishes to speak, they should activate their respective respect to speak function or use the raise hand function if attending verbally. All debates should be raised verbally, not via the chat function for the sake of the recording, and the chat function should only be used to highlight any technical issues and or to get the attention of the chair or democratic service officers. So that's the housekeeping for today. So we'll move on to the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. There are three of us in the chamber. Have we got everybody else online?
Yeah, that's right, Chair. There's 3 in the chamber and 5 cabinet members who are attending remotely today.
Super, thank you. So we're all here. No apologies for absence. Agenda item 2 is minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of February 2024. So can I take those as an accurate reflection of the meeting?
And I'll second those.
Super, thanks. And no dissent, so thank you very much. Agenda item 3 is to receive any declarations of interest, and if so, the nature of such interest. I'm not aware of any. Have we got any?
No, there were no declarations formally received for this meeting, Chair.
Thank you. And then on to the references to today's meeting. That's references. We've got 5 in total. 2 relating to the strengthening our communities and work to tackle poverty and the current cost of living crisis that went to Governance and Audit Committee. That's agenda item 4, and agenda item 5. We've got 1 on the tree strategy and 2 then on Project Zero update report. What I would propose to do, if that's in order, is to take agenda items 4 and 5 together. 6 would be covered by Mark, and then Project 0, 7 and 8 again together, so that we can explore all the themes that were brought up in those scrutiny committees. So if we have a look at agenda item 4 and 5. Agenda item 4 was the reference from Governance and Audit Committee on the 11th of December last year. And they discussed a lot about things like signposting to sources of support, the Warm Space Initiative, or Warm Welcomes as they are in this council, and the effectiveness of those, the role of citizens' advice, the role of the council's contact centre, C1V, social enterprise, also the work being done in our community-focused schools, and a special mention in terms of the situation in the rural Vale and what was happening there. Voluntary sector joint liaison, actually, they took a slightly different tack on it, and they were talking about how the third sector, the voluntary sector, is working closely with the Vale of Glamorgan, and I have to say that on that note, that there's been some amazing work done through GVS in CF61 have really moved forward since they've taken over that building, and also the St Paul's Centre in Penarth. But there's a lot of examples of the third sector working with us. There are things like the Big Box Boyd, which is when we're talking about community focus schools. But in that, in voluntary sector joint liaison, they also discussed a need to look at the drivers of the cost of living crisis as well. And I think that that's something that we do tend to look at as well, though maybe not specifically in this report. So while there was a lot of discussion, which we've been asked to take note of, there were no specific recommendations for either. So I think that they have been interesting reports to look at. But for us today, I think it's for us to note both references on agenda items 4 and 5. So I would move that.
And I'll second that, Leader.
Thank you. And no dissent from anybody, so that's agreed. Agenda item 6, and that is a reference from Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee on the 16th of January. As it was his report, and also he was there, I believe. Mark, you're going to take this one?
Yes, I am, and thank you very much, Leader. Yes, I'm going to take this report. We had a very interesting discussion at Scrutiny concerning the tree strategy, and what I was really pleased about was that Scrutiny actually welcomed it, and I'm thinking that's all due to the really hard work of the officers who really put an awful lot of work into this report. We had a very good discussion about the management of trees, and we also had a discussion about who should be consulted on. And one of the recommendations that the Scrutiny Committee recommended was that town and community councils be involved, and I think that's a really valid suggestion. The other things that we also look at was obviously that sometimes the public are not always aware when trees are taken down and why, and there is a challenge to do this effectively. And I know that sometimes we do it for good reasons, such as ash dieback, which we know is a big cause of tree disease in the UK. It's one of the leading causes of disease. And really what we need to obviously do is manage that. I'm very pleased that the council has allocated substantial amounts of money in its reserves for the management of ash dieback, and this will obviously continue. But I also want to emphasise this is still very much live. This process, this is still open to public consultation, and in fact, the public can still consult up until mid-April for this. And I know there are meetings going on in Penarth very shortly about this tree strategy, headed by the Tree Forum, and I know that many people will be going to it to hear their views. And I think it is important that people do listen. So there was a series of recommendations made by the Scrutiny Committee, and I'm happy that we note those recommendations, and I move that.
Thank you, Mark, and I'm happy to second those. And everyone else happy with that? So no dissent. So that's agreed. Super. So agenda items 7 and 8, they are both references in relation to Project Zero update report. Agenda item 7 came from Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee. That was on the 16th of January this year. And agenda item 8 was Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 17th of January. Again, a lot of discussion there. Looking at the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, there was some discussion about the links from the report to tangible actions. I think that's a worthwhile suggestion. I think it's quite difficult sometimes to actually prove causality in terms of actions and outcomes. But I think to have some sort of idea, it's like well, if I catch a bus to work rather than use a car, then what's the impact in terms of carbon uptake? There are things like that are fairly straightforward, but how these actions work, I don't know. But I think it would be useful to see if we can get some sort of linkage on that. And I think there was also discussion about Project Zero as a main priority, and therefore it required more money to be allocated. Well, therein lies the rub, really, I suppose, in terms of prioritising spend in the council's budget, and what priorities are at the top, what are in the middle, and what end up falling off the bottom. And so I think it's probably something that I'll keep a note of, because when we come to discussing the budget further, then it would be good to have some suggestions in terms of where that should take priority over the priorities that are currently being projected. So quite a few discussions about the Restore the Thor project. That seems to be very popular, and also discussion of how of the role of town and community councils and in helping to deliver that. And so that there were suggestions that the report should be forwarded to them as well. So there were no specific recommendations to Cabinet, other than committee recommend that both committees recommended to Cabinet that the report be distributed to members, to all elected members, to members of the Public Service Board and all town and community councils for their information. And that is a reference that also has come through from Corporate Performance and Resources. So I think that on the whole, we note the recommendations of, or note the comments of the two scrutiny committees, but that we agree the recommendation that the report be distributed to all elected members, members of the Public Service Board and all town and community councils for their information. And I'd move.
And I'll second the recommendations.
Super. So that's the references for today. We then have a report of a meeting, and the meeting in question is the Local Access Forum. That's agenda item 9. As we have a Cabinet member that attends that meeting, I'll ask Councillor Eddie Williams to take this reference, these minutes.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is it's quite an important meeting in the Local Access Forum, because it's really about the amenities around our towns and rural areas, and the footpaths are being maintained by the right-of-way team. And in the report, it gives quite an indication of the amount of work that they've been doing. They've been replacing footbridges and some of the furniture within the Vale. And within the report, it talks about an audit that was carried out, and the Vale are really doing really well with a lot of the work they do. As with all these things, particularly this time of year, where there are some comments made about the ground itself being soggy and whatever. But on the whole, when you look at the improvements that the Vale are doing, it's improved the accessibility. And interestingly enough, there was a group that did a presentation at the Local Access Forum called Experience Community, and they did an audit around the Vale. And there was part of that. They got a system where they grade the network in relation to accessibility, and they've highlighted some sections of the Wales to Coastal Path that could be improved, and they've been working with the right-of-way team to see what they can do with that. And it was one of the aspects that they brought to highlight was, which surprised us really, was the accessibility toilets that were on the routes, and they've got a sort of a framework which is important to improve those, and that was taken on board. That we've got opportunities, particularly in Barry and one of the rural communities, that we can improve those to improve that accessibility. So on the whole, there was a local draft report, the annual report. So people, members, and the public can look at that on the Vale website. All in all, it was a very interesting meeting and just shows how we continue to do improve and maintain the access and local footpaths around our areas. And it's one of those hidden behind the scenes, isn't it? It's not until you walk the areas yourself that you come to realise how important it is. So just like to note that in the report. Thank you.
Super, thanks, Eddie. That's helpful. So, yes, I'm happy to second that we note, and everybody else is as well from the look of it, so that's great. Agenda item 10 is the Code of Conduct Protocol Review 2024. And I think it's worth mentioning that this is actually the Employee Code of Conduct Protocol Review. So we obviously have a Code of Conduct for elected members. This was last presented to Cabinet for approval in January 2016, so it's probably time that it is reviewed. Following an internal audit report, it was recognised that revision was needed. As it turns out, in the main, the revision has included things like removal and replacement of certain hyperlinks, web referrals, references to policies and procedures, that sort of thing, to make sure that it's up to date and valid. There's been some amendments to role titles that might have changed since 2016. And an example of that is clause 110, which has been added to ensure that staff are aware that the Code of Conduct protocol is in addition to any professional codes of conduct. That actually says codes of codes. I don't know why it's done that. Codes of conduct that they might have. For example, the Code of Professional Practice for Social Care. Clause 2.2 has been enhanced to reference professional standards at work, and that's specifically in relation to the council not tolerating aggressive behaviour while at work, whether that be verbally or digital, etc., or email, that sort of thing. So it's made those minor changes. So once this is approved, this will then be sort of cascaded. It'll be communicated throughout the council to staff so that they're able to refresh their understanding of their responsibilities under the Code of Conduct. So it's it's fairly straightforward, and it's all laid out in the appendices that attach to the report. So 2 recommendations that we've got before us today are that Cabinet considers and approves the revised Code of Conduct Protocol as described in this report and Appendix A, and that subject to the agreement to recommendation 1, Cabinet approves the proposals described in this report for the Head of Human Resources and Organisational Development to ensure the revised code is communicated to all staff. And I'm happy to move that.
And I'll second those recommendations.
Thank you. And everyone else happy? That's good. Thank you. Agenda item 11 is the draft Vale of Glamorgan Council annual delivery plan. And it is actually coming to us today. And if agreed by us, it will then go on to the full council on the 6th of March for consideration and hopefully approval. So this report actually went to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee yesterday, and while there was discussion of it, there were no actual formal recommendations. I attended the scrutiny to make sure that I had it, and that there were notes made, and one actually very positive note is the way in which it is laid out within this, the changes that have been made as a result of the consultation that this has gone through. Just look at this. Have I got a hands up?
No, that's it. It's got there.
Ah, right, fine. It's all right. I'm still getting used to the hybrid system. So yes, so they said that they felt it was really positive the way that it had been laid out, and it was a lot easier to see how things had changed as a result of comments that had been made, and so that's easy for the reader to see. A comment that there was explicit mention of the role of communications in it, and also while it was communicated, it was congratulated. There were some queries about whether or not the council is sort of best placed to be judging itself, but hopefully the more input we get from stakeholders, the less that will be the case. So as I said, after the conversation yesterday, and the fact that the report is fully laid out here, and the fact that it is going to go to full council on the 6th of March, I won't go into it in any greater depth, but turn to the recommendations, the 4 recommendations that we have before us. And firstly, that Cabinet considers the updated draft annual delivery plan, which is laid out at Appendix A, the consultation feedback report, which is at Appendix B, and the equality impact assessment, which is at Appendix C. That Cabinet considers any recommendations arising from discussion of the revised draft annual delivery plan by the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee on 21st of February 2024. As I said, there were no recommendations from them. And 3, that pursuant to recommendation 2, Cabinet endorses the draft annual delivery plan, Appendix A, and refers the report and appendices to Council on the 6th of March 2024 for consideration and approval. And in order to get it to Council on the 6th of March, recommendation 4 is that use of the urgent decision procedure as set out in section 1514 of the Council's Constitution be approved in order for the final annual delivery plan to be referred to full council on the 6th of March 2024 for consideration and approval. And I would move.
And I'll second those recommendations.
Super. Yeah, okay, Gwyn, and nothing coming through online. So that's agreed. Excellent. So we now go on to agenda item 12, which is the annual report for SACRA, SAC 2022-23, and that is the report for the Cabinet Member for Education, Arts and Welsh Language, or Rhiannon, and ably assisted by Eddie, I'm assured. So over to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you, Liz. Right, this is the annual report, which has been before us before. So what I will do is just look at the summary, and then I'm going to hand over to Eddie to look at the recommendations. So this report summarises the activities of the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, as detailed in the annual report 22-23. The local authority, that's us, is required to agree and ratify this annual report for 22-23, and then once it's been ratified, it is published. Subject to approval by Cabinet, the clerk to the SACRE will arrange for copies of the annual report to be published on the Vale of Glamorgan's website. It will be sent to all schools within the authority, the DFES, the National Library, and to such other individuals and institutions considered to be appropriate. At this point, I'll hand over to Eddie, who's got a much greater role to play in this than I.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and it's quite clear that this, much of the report is based on legislation, and there's been quite considerable change, hence the SACRA and the SAC titles. There's an overlap at the moment, which is clearly laid out in the report. Key points I would like to point out on it is that within there, it's part of the agreed syllabus. It does impact on schools, particularly with the curriculum for Wales. There's a change in way that we're delivering religious values and education religion, values and ethics, within the curriculum, which gives a much better way of delivery to the pupils and children in our school, right through the ranges from primary up to secondary, with a view for them to have a critical and a questioning view on these. Such a broad subject, and it's you will see within the makeup of the committee and the advisory council, there's members themselves, there's representatives of religious groups, and also the teachers themselves who had a major impact on what's been delivered. The good news is we've had an Eston report, and they do report on some of it. They've reported on 8 primaries and 1 secondary school in the report, and they've got a positive outcome from that as well. So that's really useful. And also, as part of this document, you'll see at the back of it is lots of resources for the schools to utilise. And there's been quite a considerable amount of work on that across the breadth of both religions, values, ethics, and people with non-religious beliefs as well. So I second the move from, I suppose we better go through the recommendations first, haven't I? My apologies. Okay, so the recommendations then, if I just get to the reports, is the Cabinet considers the attached annual report for the SAC Appendix 1 and 2 for ratification and publication. The reason why there are 2 is obviously one's being translated, so that's Appendix 2. And then the Cabinet refers this report and the appendices to the Learning Culture Scrutiny Committee for consideration. And should the Scrutiny Committee make no further comments, then Cabinet would consider the annual report for SAC as agreed and ratify for publication. I so move.
I'd like to second those, please.
And we don't have any dissent in here, so that's agreed. I think it's worth explaining that that Eddie came in on that one as a very long-standing member of SACRI, and with a great depth of knowledge, so has been involved in the formulation of these reports. So very, very pleased to have your expertise, Eddie. Thank you for that. So that's agreed, and we shall move on to agenda item 13. And this is a report from the Cabinet Member for Leisure, Sport and Wellbeing in relation to proposed improvements to the Calcutta and Buttrells recreation sites in Barry, which I hope will be a very interesting development. So over to you, Gwyn.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And this is a good news story for footballers and boxers in Barry. The existing changing facilities at the Barry Sports Centre at Calcutta are in urgent need of replacement, as they have fallen into disrepair and do not meet the needs of all customers. There is also a sand-filled artificial turf pitch at the site, which is now as redundant, has not been used for many years. With Barry having 4 full-sized ATPs, 3 on school sites and 1 at Jenner Park, and additional smaller ATPs at various other locations. We have a very good hockey pitch at Pencoitra. It's of international standard. We also have a very good 3G pitches for football on Whitmore High School. So we're well equipped right across the town. It is proposed to build new changing rooms on the Buttrells recreation field that will have the capability of being able to cater for everyone. The advantage of building on the Buttrells site means that users will no longer be required to walk across the Calcutta Road to access the fields of the Buttrells, which has been a safety concern. The Buttrells playing field is where most football pitches are located, and existing facilities will be able to continue to operate whilst the new facilities are built. 11-a-side football will be played at the Buttrells, as it is now, but there'll be no mini football at the Buttrells. That will be played at Calcutta side of the fields. And therefore, no children will be running across that road in future like they do today. The new facility will require expansion of the current car park at Buttrells Community Centre and could include other options such as a kiosk for food and drink sales and a meeting room space. The existing facilities at the Colquitt site would only be demolished once the new changing room block is operational. Provision for Colquitt Amateur Boxing Club would need to be integrated as part of this new changing room development, as it would not be possible to leave the existing building in place when the old sports centre site is demolished. The replacement would be on a like-for-like basis and would be self-contained as with the present building. Colquitt Amateur Boxing Club has expressed their ambition to expand their facilities in the past, and assistance will be given to them to seek additional external funding to expand their facilities if this is still their intention. However, the full cost of any expansion beyond the current footprint would need to be met by the club. The remaining recreation facilities at the Colquitt site would continue to be serviced by the remaining sports hall as part of the leisure management contract. Discussions will also be held with the Vale Glamorgan Football League about the management of the new changing rooms, as there could be opportunity for savings similar to other asset transfers that have been delivered previously. A further report to Cabinet will outline management proposals for the site in due course. Notice will need to be served to both the dance school and nursery, who currently use the hall at the existing old sports centre site, and it is expected that the earliest they would need to leave site would be September 25, and officers will try to assist both businesses to find alternative premises if they wish to continue to operate. The provision of a new hall is not included in the new plans for the changing rooms, as Barry currently has a significant number of sports halls following the 21st Century School investments. There are also several community centres in the area. Following the success of the new skate park at the Nap, officers are also aware of a demand for a pump track in Barry. That is an outdoor cycle track that can also be used by a variety of other wheel sports. The Colquitt site would be an ideal location for such facilities, subject to funding being available. Early indications from Sport Wales and Welsh Cycling have indicated support for such a track in Barry, and have stated that they would welcome an application for funding should funds become available in the future for a grant application. We're also looking to, obviously with the mini pitches, we're looking in the future to supply a mugger, a multi-use game area, and a play area at the Colquitt. The recommendations are on page 3 and 4, and they run from recommendation 1 through to recommendation 11, Leader. So I would like to move recommendations this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwyn. It's a really super report, and it's one of those ones where quite often people say, well, you know, we want all the definites. Well, actually, we're bringing this forward now while we've got you know, a very broad plan that we can now work through with, hopefully, with cabinet agreement.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming, Leader, but we finally got there.
But I agree with you. When I was down at the opening of the skate park in the Nap, and actually people were talking about it, so I went home and had a look on YouTube. It's actually quite scary. I don't think I'll be going on it if we do have one. But no, I think really exciting. And also just something simple like avoiding dozens of children crossing a busy road will in itself, I think, be a major advance. I've got no hesitation to in seconding this, although I'm sure the Deputy Leader probably wants to push me out of the way to do so. We definitely don't have any dissent amongst people online or in the chamber, so happy to agree that that's passed. Then we have some more good news, agenda item 14, and that is from the Cabinet Member for Public Sector Housing and Tenant Engagement on a windows and doors replacement scheme from 2024 to 27. So that's over to Sandra.
Thank you, Leader. And I think this report sort of builds on, if you'll excuse the pun, the the update of our council properties that we've had between 2012 and 2018, where a major improvement programme to bring the condition of our housing stock up to the requirements of the Welsh Housing Quality Standards 23. So the council has an obligation under the said Welsh Housing Quality Standard 23 to maintain and improve its housing stock to ensure compliance with the new standard. Whilst all the requirements of the previous standard remain, there are several new requirements which focus on the environment and carbon reduction, which as a council, we're really keen on ensuring that we comply with all that. This is a report details the windows and door replacement programme for 24 to 27 for domestic properties, including any outbuildings requiring windows and doors to be replaced in pursuance of the new standards. A report detailing the outcome of the tender process for the windows and door replacement programme 24 to 27 is detailed in agenda as part 2. And just to give people a flavour of the number that we're actually looking at over the next 3 years. So 24 to 25 is 216 properties, 25 to 26 is 180 properties, and 26 to 27 is 65 properties. So if my maths are correct, that's 461 properties that will be getting new windows and doors. So the recommendation is that Cabinet notes the contents of the report with a view to taking decisions on the award of the contract detailed within the Part 2 report later on in this agenda. So I'd like to move that recommendation.
Thank you, and happy to second that. And yes, everyone's in agreement. So that's agreed. So as you mentioned, there is a Part 2 report that we have to consider alongside that. So first of all, if we look at agenda item 15, I don't have any items that are urgent, but as I said, we do have an item at 16 which is linked to your earlier item. But as these matters are considered confidential, the meeting will need to move into private session where we can discuss them under Part 2. So I will therefore ask for Cabinet to agree to move to Part 2 and ask the Cabinet Officer to stop recording of this open session and ensure to hear the detail of the items to be discussed. Following the meeting, the outcome of the Part 2 discussions will be formally captured as part of the minutes of the meeting and will advise all parties of the final decisions of the Cabinet for the relevant items. So if I can formally move Part 2.
And I'll second that, Leader.
You had pressed it, I think, to press it. And ask the Cabinet